Good evening and welcome to fiscal year 2023 budget discussion meeting. This is the Ways and Means Committee of the Greenfield City Council. Today is Thursday, April 14th, 2022. It is 6 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded and videotaped by the Ways and Means Committee and GCTV 15. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify me at this time. Okay, thank you very much. We'll have a roll call. Counselor Jarvis.
Here.
Counselor DeSorga.
Here.
Counselor Healy.
Here.
Counselor Toronzo.
Here.
And I'm Counselor Forgy. We have a full quorum tonight. Thank you all for being here. No approval of the minutes. There is no public hearing this evening, and there are no motions for consideration. Tonight, the sole purpose of our meeting is for budget discussions. We should all have our budget books in front of us. Tonight, we are going to discuss the mayor's proposed budgets for Greenfield Public Schools and the Franklin County Technical School. I see that we have our superintendent of school, Dr. Christine DeBarge, that is here with us this evening. And so I'd like to turn it over to you. We can find the school budget paperwork in the workbook on page 125 through 128. Dr. DeBarge, thank you for being with us.
Yes, thank you. I apologize. I have my budget book. I don't have the mayor's budget book. So but I think we'll be okay.
I think we'll do fine. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much. What I'd like to do is review at a high level the presentation that I shared with the school committee when I presented the superintendent's budget for FY23. One of the things that I highlighted in that presentation is that the budget was built with a focus on several priority areas. Those had been shared with me when I interviewed for the position, and that has been reinforced many times during the months that I've been in Greenfield. So it made a lot of sense to ensure that we were building the resources to meet the priorities and the needs of the district. So those included building a strong foundation across the district for both sides of the mass-tiered system of support triangle. That's a graphic that's often used to describe how you increase services and supports for students as you identify a smaller group of students that require additional services. So the bottom of the triangle is often referred to as the core. That's the bulk of students. We think about 80% of those students having their needs met with a core curriculum for academics and the basic approach to social emotional learning support and disciplinary supports. As you move up the triangle into a yellow area, that's generally thought of about 15% of your population need smaller groups, somewhat more intensive services. And then as you reach the top, that's often depicted in red and should reflect no more than approximately 5 to 7% of your population who need the most extensive and intensive supports. So as I looked at the budget, we're trying to create opportunities to enhance all areas of that mass-tiered system of support, both from the academic and the social, emotional, behavioral sides. You'll forgive me sometimes as I talk about it, I do the hand gestures to represent the triangle because that's the framework that we use. So creating consistency and continuity across and between buildings. That was a piece that was talked about quite a bit when I interviewed, was that each building, each elementary building, and then even middle school and high school seemed to do things differently than their partner schools. And that creates discrepancies in the types of educational opportunities that students got. So one of our areas of focus was ensuring consistency. Identifying, purchasing, and providing training in high-quality instructional materials and instructional approaches. There was no consistent approach or resource for reading, English language arts instruction, or mathematics instruction. One of the biggest pieces that we focused on this year and will continue to do in the budget is focus on providing all of our students with high quality instructional materials. There is data that the Department of Education provides supporting that students who have access to high quality instructional materials make better academic gains. So this year we have begun piloting for our English language arts program up through grade 7, and we are still doing some work at the elementary and middle schools in confirming our math supports and resources. We are committing resources to writing, academic, and social emotional learning curriculum. So in order to have consistency across all the buildings and as students move from one grade to another, teachers need the resources of a written, consistent document that outlines the standards that they're addressing in each instructional unit, what resources are available, and what types of assessments are available to be used to measure student progress. We want consistency so that one third grade classroom in one building is not getting a different type of instruction, resource, or assessment than another third grade in a different building. We also want to make sure that we have the resources so that things build on each other instead of repeating. I'm sure all of us or many of us will remember that we potentially did the butterfly unit 7 times as we went through school, or we read Catcher in the Rye every year through high school. And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure our students have a variety of experiences that reach all of our academic standards. We also want to provide embedded rather than professional development that's one and done. Frequently in education, you have the experience of you go to a conference, you hear what's being presented, you go back to your building, you try to do what you've learned, and then you hit a roadblock, you don't have services or supports, and then you stop doing that new thing that you learned because you don't have anybody to help you get past the roadblock. So we're really focusing on support that is continuous and available at different levels, school-wide, team-wide, individual teacher-wide, and at the administrative level, so that we really embed the new learning into the fiber of the district. And then the last thing is assessing and providing essential resources for staff and students, especially related to technology and facilities. You folks have heard some of the state of our technology, and we also have been identifying with my new facilities director, we've been identifying areas in the buildings that need to be addressed, including a fairly new realization that we need to install a portable wheelchair lift for one of our buildings to address a fairly long-standing ADA concern. So that's something that's risen to the top that needs to be addressed. So those are the priorities for next year's budget. So in terms of the social emotional learning, we have curriculum materials being written and purchased. We are looking to maintain the staffing that we have added in terms of social workers. I was just able to hire our community resource and equity coordinator, so that will be a huge addition to the district. And we also need to continue with the professional development regarding trauma-informed care and also working on our race and equity awareness. We are focusing on ensuring that all students across all the buildings have access to high-quality resources, curriculum, services, and professional development. So some of the things that we're making sure is that as we do things such as weed the library collection in one library, that we continue that and weed the library collection in all libraries so that all students have new, relevant, curriculum-related materials that reflect the population that they see in the world around them. We are working with the Department of Education, elementary and secondary education, to improve our underperforming schools, which are the middle school and Federal Street School, by working with the statewide system of support through the State Department of Ed. And we're also assessing and improving our academic programming, again, following that tiered model as a framework. Some things include, we just identified a new kindergarten and preschool screening so that all of our incoming students will have the same entry level assessment, and we can group students and identify services that they need early on. And we are comparing, apples to apples, so to speak, by using the same identified research-based assessment. No, I'm talking a lot. I apologize. There's a lot to the school budget. So we are looking to support our social and emotional learning by maintaining the increase in our social work staff to fill a director of behavioral support position. One of the goals of that position is not only to support our students in the general education classrooms that are experiencing challenges, but also to help us enhance and refine our special education programs so that some of our students who are being educated outside of the district could possibly return to the district. Not only does that give them the opportunity to be educated in their home school with their peers, but it also is a financial savings to the district when students are in-house, so they benefit and the bottom line of the budget benefits. We provide professional development for all our district staff about, as I said, the trauma-informed care. We are working with the Collaborative for Educational Services to expand our focus on equity district-wide. We are going to maintain that newly hired position of our Social Justice and Community Resource Coordinator. And we have started and will continue providing professional training to our social work and counseling staff on a variety of topics. In terms of the priorities for academics, we are maintaining the coach intervention positions at the elementary and middle schools. We are working with the Department of Ed regarding high quality instructional materials, streamlining the use of online resources for academics. We are looking at and have looked at, which is reflected in the budget proposal, usage reports. So any online program, we've been contacting the vendor to see how many of our staff or students are actually logging on and using the different programs that we've paid for in the past. And then Karen Patnode, the assistant superintendent, and I make decisions about what are the academic needs that those programs address and which ones are actually being utilized. And then those resources will be available consistently for all students across the district instead of different buildings accessing different types of supports. We are budgeting for English language arts intervention resources. It is recommended when you're supporting those students who fall in the yellow and the red that you use research-based programs to support their reading needs. So we are working to identify those, and we have funds allocated in the budget to do that so that we can help our struggling readers improve their skills. We are increasing instructional supplies in the budget versus having parents provide them. We had some inconsistencies across the schools where some buildings were sending notices home for the parents to provide basic instructional materials. And in other buildings, they were using fundraising to provide the resources needed for art and music and physical education instruction. I believe that if we are offering high quality public education, our students should have access to the materials they need, not contingent on fundraising. We are increasing the library books at all of our elementary schools and our middle school. That's with grant funding, but it is still a very critical element to the budget that we've presented. We are also increasing or proposing to increase staffing at the high school in two critical areas. One, a physical education and health teacher, because we need to watch the numbers of students per class, especially in health, and we need to ensure that they meet the minimum number of credits required for graduation, which we're challenged with that. And unfortunately, without the additional elective teacher that we are proposing to add, many students are pushed into health and PE, overcrowding those areas and creating a competition, so to speak, for the seats in those classes, again, which are needed for graduation. We're also hoping that one of those elective teachers will be able to be the manufacturing teacher that was once at the high school and was reduced at some point. We have a beautiful manufacturing area. I'm not sure if any of you have seen it, but it's a very beautiful unused area. And Derek, our principal at the high school, Karen and I have been working with staff from GCC to try and rebuild pathways for our students to start work experience at the high school and move to GCC having some workplace relevant skills so that they can, find a career, a pathway that is engaging for them. And one of the big things is we're looking to replace instructional technology to support instruction. We have some special education needs. We need to add 2 teachers, one at the high school, one at the middle school, to meet the needs of students as identified on their educational plans. That's federal mandate that we provide the services that we have identified that students require. And we are running up against some scheduling challenges, primarily at the middle school, and we need to create and enhance a program, specialized program at our high school to support students with social, emotional, and behavioral issues. And we do not currently have positions available to do either of those. Okay. And so the budget details as presented from the superintendent to the school committee, and I realize the mayor has made a minor adjustment of about 1.38%, if I recall correctly, in what budget she's putting forward. But from FY22, the local appropriation was provided was $19,731,080. And the requested local appropriation from the school committee this year was $21,255,213. So that was a 7.7%. And as I said, the mayor reduced that to a 6.34. I have not identified areas where that reduction would be reflected. My intention would be to address any modifications to the budget when a final decision is made. So what we have are some changes that you will see, some fluctuations in the line item budget for a variety of reasons. One, staffing is, we're doing our best, Andy Paquette, business manager, and I are doing our best to move staff into the line where they actually exist. We have had a substantial amount of change during this year, and in prior years, there was some use of very specific finite budget lines that actually ended up not representing where our staffing truly was being charged. So we're doing our best to move them into where they belong so it reflects the true cost centers. The other thing you'll see in our staffing increases, one, it is the cumulative impact of retroactive pay in a collective bargaining agreement that was signed. And now we have to build it into the budget to reflect the FY23 salaries. So some of the increases look significant, but that's actually multiple years of retro pay that have all coalesced in the FY23. The retro has been paid. This is just the cumulative increase over that contract. We also have staff who've attained higher academic degrees, and that comes with an increase or a move on the salary scale from any collective bargaining increase. And we also have steps, meaning that staff who's been here a number of years will move up. And again, that is already determined for this year in the last collective bargaining. So a lot of the staff changes that you'll see is moving people into the correct unit, the cumulative impact of the prior collective bargaining, and any academic degrees that are needing to be reflected. I think what else is substantial in that? There's a lot substantial in the budget. Andy, are there any points you'd like to highlight that I'm missing in the line item budget?
No, I'd say you've hit on the major trends that we've seen in going from 22 to 23.
Okay. So if you're all still awake, you probably have some questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Before we take questions, I wonder, is there any kind of a graphic that you wanted to present to us in showing us increases, or a pie chart or anything like that? I'm just checking.
Anything that we had wanted to share should be in the mayor's budget book.
Councillor Forgy, this is Secretary Ekstrom from the school committee. I wonder if I might expand a bit, if that would be acceptable.
Sure, go right ahead.
Dr. DeBarge has done a number of things that the school committee, since I'm actually at this point the ranking member, has been asking for some time. And while moving an employee's name from one place to another sounds frivolous, it actually is not. It really lends itself to being a more reliable budget. And, and the increases in salaries are to bring us more in line with other districts, which is important so that we retain excellent teachers and educators. And when I say that, I think of everyone who works in the district, because everyone who is an employee, in my mind, is an educator. And so I am so grateful, and I think as a committee, we are so grateful for everything that Dr. DeBarge has brought to us. And Andy has done a wonderful job with cleaning up line items and making things make sense, essentially, when you look at the budget. And the school committee is fully behind this and united in what's been presented. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Just so that you know, in our budget book, we have 4 pages. And the local appropriation comparison by cost center, I'll hold it up. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's the only information, that's the only numeric information that we have, actually. I think it's fabulous to do it this way, but I also wonder if there is an information that might give us a little bit more of, I mean, this is great by cost centers, but I don't know what the teacher, say the teacher salary and wage pieces are. And I don't know what your supply line items look like. That's why I was asking if there was a chart that more or less broke it out that way.
So we do have some, I apologize.
No,
sent
please.
some pie charts and other things that that shared that. So Andy, I do have some of the cost centers that I can share with the increases that may be helpful in terms of conversation. But Andy, I'll ask you if you can pull any of the salary increases while I review some of the others.
I do, but I have it on my laptop, and if you give me time so I can log on, so I can share a screen, I'm doing the meeting on my iPad and have the laptop.
I will speak slowly to give you time to log on.
Okay.
So some of the things some of the cost centers, our district curriculum and instruction line increased by 22%, was an increase of $116,000. Primarily, that reflects moving many of the online instructional programs out of either some of the individual school buildings or out of the technology budget because they're instructionally driven programs. So we moved those. We also have an increase in professional development that is reflected in our curriculum and instruction. Some of it is grant funded, some of it is local. Some of that professional development is driven by contractual obligations that are included in some of our collective bargaining agreements that we have to provide a level of funding each year to be accessed for trainings or college courses for some of our teachers or our instructional assistants. But much of it has to do with continuing the work of our social emotional curriculum and our equity work. We're pleased that a lot of our ELA and math support is either provided by the Department of Education or comes with the purchase of our instructional materials, so didn't need to be a substantial increase. Our athletic program is increasing about 50%, which is a monetary increase of just under $34,000 in the budget that reflects the cost of running a full year program. We're very pleased and excited that we're looking to offer a full year of athletics. We also need some new equipment, some new uniforms. So Coach K built all that into the budget so that we could fully support the athletic program. District nursing, we have made some additional hires that came in at a level of higher experience than some of our other staff. We also added a float nurse because we weren't able to get substitute nurses. And you can imagine in a pandemic, it was not a good idea to be running short of nurses. And to be honest, even without the pandemic, our nursing needs are significant. I don't know if folks realize that the nurses don't only deal with the day-to-day, injuries or the I don't feel goods and go to the nurse's office. They are also required to do a number of state mandated screenings, hearing, vision, posture. There is a mental health screening that's required in our secondary grades. They administer medications to a fair number of students. They are also a significant piece of our mental health support. The nursing is often the first person who sees a child that's struggling. They are trained to identify a student who's struggling with a safety issue, eating disorders, things along that line. So they have a number of what they would identify as mental health visits that may not be the ongoing counseling we think of, but they are a critical piece of our mental health work. So we did increase nursing. The technology, we added a technology staff person. It is grant funded, but even with the one addition, we tried to get 2 additional staff people with our technology, in our technology with grants. We were unable to find a candidate to fill the second position. So we are working with 1 additional staff, but probably need 10 additional to meet the increasing technology needs across the district. Our special education line increased just over $169,000. Some of that had to do with accurately reflecting the expenditures. We found that pardon me, I lost my train of thought. We weren't actually reflecting in the budget what we had seen as a trend in expenditures in some of the pieces of the special education budget. So we asked Dr. Dickinson to accurately reflect. Primarily, it was around special education technology. And so that was a piece that we needed to budget appropriately. And then business administration was business office, business services was flat. The school committee's line actually decreased. They were nice and didn't bring that up during the budget hearing, but we looked at 5-year trends and saw that some of the lines were not being utilized at the level that they were budgeted, so we reduced those. We reduced the lines for Section 504 services because all of that could appropriately be moved into some general education services. So those are some of our cost centers. Andy, can you speak to the personnel cost center that's on the 22 to 23 local appropriation comparison?
He's no longer on the line, Dr. DeBarge, unfortunately.
Oh, well, I guess that's a no.
Yeah, I think technology-wise, he just fell off, not intentionally departed.
I'm assuming not. He knows better than to do that.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, I can get you the graphic that you are looking for tomorrow morning. It is, I have it available. I submitted some of it with the budget book proposal, and I apologize that it's not included. But I can send it to you after this meeting.
That is fine. I appreciate that very much, and just sending the graphics later on, just send them to Kathy Scott, and she'll get them out to us. And I understand that's fine. Again, I will open it up to questions for the committee. But is there anything else you'd like to tell us about I call it Esser money, and special revenue funds that are listed in our book on page 128?
Okay. Does it say FY23 other funding sources?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. No, I just want to make sure I have the right page too. So the Esser one, as you folks I'm sure know, the Esser grants were provided in 3 waves. They have 3 different expiration dates. The first Esser one expires actually September of 22. The last expense we'll be using that for is some of our summer school costs for this upcoming summer. We anticipate a substantial summer school need, and we have already posted that, but we're hoping that we can get the staff that we need, but we're not completely confident that that will be the case. So we have done a lot with Esser 1 in terms of facilities. That was the first wave. So a lot of air filters and cleaning equipment and masks and hand sanitizer were used. But now we're moving in with Essers 2 and 3. We are doing more around funding our social work staff. The director of behavioral services that is included in the budget is offset by a grant. Our coach interventionists are offset by these grant funds. We are paying the so I always forget the title of the new position, Equity Coordinator, Community Resource Liaison. That is a grant-funded position. We are doing much of our professional development related to social emotional learning and equity and trauma through grants. Technology is being paid for out of Esser funds. We have facilities upgrades that are budgeted in there, including some water bottle filling stations and some safety and security upgrades that I'm sure you understand. I won't get into to too much of a degree. We do have ELA and math resources allocated. We will be able to expand or shift the use of those funds because we were awarded a $200,000 DESI grant for ELA curriculum materials. What we need to see is what the 200,000 gets us in terms of all the classrooms and students, and then potentially reallocate for either additional resources or moving to purchasing ELA and math resources for some higher grades. We funded summer school for multiple years. We have a late bus going so that students can stay after school several days a week to get extra help. Probably about a million other things, but those are the highlights, I believe, that you can see. Our belief is very much that we need to use the ESSER funds to try to offset or fill the gaps that our students are experiencing after being home for 2 years. That's really the intention. And I feel like we have managed to use or write the grants to really have as much direct impact on students as possible, from a health, physical or mental health, and academic improvement standpoint. Title I, again, we're paying for reading interventionists across the district. We are paying for professional development, pay for instructional materials. Title IV, we are using to pay for some library books. That's part of how we are improving our library connections. So, and IDEA is special education, and that is used to pay for special education tuitions or transportation. Basically, as is circuit breaker, that is reimbursement for high-cost special education services, and that's the estimate for FY23. We did ask Dr. Dickinson to apply for circuit breaker extraordinary relief, which she did, and we were denied. We were told we did not hit the threshold to receive extraordinary relief. I feel like we need extraordinary relief given the needs we've seen in our students this year, but mathematically, apparently, although Andy said he'd like to revisit not Dr. Dickinson's work, but to potentially have a follow-up conversation with the state about that. And then our special ed tuition, that's revenue for districts that pay us to provide services in our district for some of their students. That's used to offset special education transportation needs. And the preschool revolving helps us to pay for some of our preschool staff.
Thank you. I do see Andy back on the line. Do you
Good to
Apologies.
see.
you have something for us, or if you don't, we can take care of it another way. But if you have something for us,
What I can, if I'm able to share, I have.
Hold on, member 4G.
Go ahead.
Right, thanks, Andy. Because I wouldn't expect members of the city council to be involved with school funding and all of those things. When we discuss circuit breaker, sorry, gnats are coming out. We are reimbursed for 70% of special education expenses. It is not the full 100% reimbursement. And as anyone who spends time with education would know or understand, the cost keeps going up every year. So even when we're reimbursed at 70%, that doesn't necessarily mean that it would cover the cost for the next year at 70%.
Thank you for that, Susan. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
That's okay. So what I'm going to share, if I may, this is the detailed line item budget that the school committee has seen.
Okay.
And what we have at the bottom is it's just a total salary of all the salary lines in the detail below, and you'll see the salary increase. And as Dr. DeBarge mentioned, because the 22 salary local, the retroactive from the 2 prior years was paid out of school choice. When you look and see the increase, about 4.42% of the increase in salaries is that compounding impact of the fact that the retro for the 2 prior years was not paid out of the local funding. The city finance director had us pay it out of choice. And so, I just want to make sure when you look and see that there's not the sticker shock of, oh my goodness, there's an 8% increase, when in fact, looking at if we were to go through the all funds, you would see the fact that, of the salary increase, for lack of it, about $599,600 of it would be quote unquote attributable to the prior year retro. So if I am allowed to share my screen.
Okay, let's give it a try.
Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
I'll try and make it large. So this here, Councilwoman, is like all the details where like you're asking for, which the school committee has seen and is on the district website. So I'm just making it bigger so you can see, so when we get down to the bottom, it's all done by the cost center summaries that were on what was included in the mayor's budget. And then when we go down to the bottom, you'll see, and I'm going fast, but the salary portion here, and this gets to the, so the FY22 local salary was 14.7. The FY23 proposed is 15.9. So 8.35% increase, 1.2 million. About half of that is the attributable, if you will, to the adjusting of the baseline for FY22 with the retros being paid out of school choice, and now us factoring the actual new salaries as they're currently negotiated. We're in the midst of negotiations right now, being reflected in the FY23 local.
Thank you. And that's exactly what I had in mind. So this is very good information for us. If we can get it through the clerk's office to us, that would be
Absolutely.
great. So that we could go ahead and read through it and, digest it before we have to vote on it. So that would be
Absolutely.
excellent. Excellent.
We'll get it to you right after this meeting.
Okay, thank you so much.
Is
So
there
I will-
anything in particular on this that I apologize for the lateness of getting on? Is there anything in particular you would want to see, or do you want me to stop sharing my screen, I guess?
I do not have any need to see anything in particular. I am going to open up the floor to the members of Ways and Means, and I think that will be fine. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that very much.
I mean, if anyone wanted it pulled back up, now that we know we can do it, just let me know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everybody, if you have questions for either Dr. DeBarge or Andy Paquette, or even Susan Ekstrom, who is on the line as well, where we should ask and we should use, clarification pieces and stuff like that. So I'll open it up to anybody who has some questions.
Counselor Forgy?
Yes, Counselor DeSorga. I can't see you, but I can hear
Okay.
you.
So I looked at this. I found it on the school website.
Okay.
And what I wanted to know was, you have the 3 elementary schools, And I noticed the differences in their budgets. Did the Federal Street School have less children in it than Four Corners and Newton School, or do they all have about the same number of children attending?
I don't have their enrollments. They're generally within the same ballpark, but I can get their specific enrollments. Some of the factors that contribute to, for example, Newton School being a little bit higher than the others is we have some staff that travel between buildings.
Uh-huh.
And in some cases, we put them in a particular building for budgetary purposes, such as a music teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So Newton School, certainly in a line for staffing, reflects an entirely new salary that that staff person provides music lessons at all three schools, but we put his salary in Newton for the purposes of budgeting. So that's one example of why it would be a little bit higher.
Okay.
I actually do, if I may, I do have enrollment figures for you.
Nice.
Great.
Discovery School, Four Corners has 237, Federal Street 203, Newton School 211, and then the Academy North Parish has 83.
83.
Yes.
And can you, if you have that page open or whatever, what are the?
It's from the, I went to the, it's that I can share that it's the DESE district profile. So let me share my screen now that we.
Okay.
You have a new toy, Andy. You're going to keep sharing your screen all
I
night.
know. Does anyone want anything else shared?
No, I looked on the DESE website, but I hadn't found that. So that's great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
So if you look and see right here in the center, and I mean, it has all the schools. You can see this is based on October 1 enrollment. So obviously changes might not have occurred.
Leave
between
that, just leave that up for a minute. I want to look.
Absolutely.
Is anybody else having frozen problems?
I'm okay. Mike, are you having problems?
I mean, luckily I had a second computer here that I was running off of, but yeah, my other one is totally frozen. I can't do anything. So I'm just going to shut that one. That's the Chromebook
Okay.
from the city.
Okay.
You might.
We're glad you're still with us.
So our high school numbers have gone up then. Looks like the high school number went up. Oh, I had one question when I looked at it. When I looked at the budget that was on the school budget, it looked like there was a fair amount of grant money over in the far right column. Is that what I wanted to know was, is that mostly Esser funding that we're thinking that we're just getting the Esser funding for the next year or so, or how long does the Esser go out?
So the Esser goes out in 3 different stages.
Mm-hmm.
The first one ends September of 2022. The
Okay.
second one, September of 2023. And the third one is September 2024. So
Mhm.
Andy is showing off a little bit again with the screen sharing and
So if I may, Dr. DeBart, so what we have here, and if you go through the detail, you'll see it's totaled in this column here, but we have all the Essers as what we're attributing to for FY23, but it also includes the Title I, Title IIA, Title IV, the 2 SPED grants, in addition to the revolving accounts that I heard Dr. DeBarge discussing when I came back on as our other funding sources to get us to both the all funds and how we are offsetting to get to the revised local request. So it includes, I get long answers, it includes both Esser and the normal entitlement grants that the district receives, in addition to the revolving accounts that we use yearly for offsetting.
we're trying to utilize the Esser grants in a way that extends the service as long as possible for the students. So in some cases, you'll see the same service. There is a breakdown on the district website of how I had proposed the use of the Esser grants at that time. We're in the process, honestly, of making some amendments, so that will be updated. But some services repeat being funded through the grant, once in Esser 1, once in Esser 2, once in Esser 3. And then in some places, we're trying to absorb the cost of some of the services into the local over time. So we're using less money in a second or third year. That's the intention, is to use less money in a second or third year. We really very much want to avoid what's been described as the funding cliff with the Esser money, where we've hired 30 new staff people, and all of a sudden in September of 24, we have to lay them all off. So that's why you'll see a lot of technology, facilities, because we are looking at one-time grant funds and don't want to have all of our staff based in grants with no opportunity to move any of them into the budget. I struggle with the prospect of bringing on very valuable staff to support our kids and having to know that at that particular time we'll be losing a huge chunk of them. So we tried to balance staff and other.
All right. Thank you again. Are there any more questions? This is a lot to digest, and so we are
I do,
thankful.
Chris.
Say again?
I just had a couple questions.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
I don't know if I'm reading this right, but I'm getting that like 63% of the budget is for salaries. Is that correct?
Probably correct.
Yep. Okay.
Like
I figured it probably was. I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at that. And then what, if you have this kind of information, what differences between now and, let's say like pre-pandemic year, like 2019 to 2020 budget, as you're saying, some of these grants are specifically tailored for what was going on there. But what differences would we be able to make up for in comparison to before? Let's just say if the pandemic never happened, we were back in like the 2019, 2020 year. What can we expect to be improved upon what was back then? If I know it's kind of a weird question, but
what are you getting for all this $20 million, kind of, if I'm understanding right?
well, I'm just wondering like what the like if certain staffing levels we're at in 2019 versus like what we're trying to accomplish now. So like you said, not trying to do this all through just grant funding, but knowing what we're going to be encountering going forward is.
So I mean, off the top of my head, I can't speak to the staffing levels from 2019. What I can do is speak to what I've either seen in data that I apologize, I don't have in front of me right now, but our academic performance prior to the pandemic was not where it needed to be, regardless. We were not performing at levels where we should have been. And that was exacerbated by students being at home. So there are some things that we're doing that are really geared for catch up. And then there are some things we're doing that are geared to make that core instruction solid. So
Right.
Things like the high quality instructional materials are things that are good for core. It will help students close the gaps, but it's also something that we should have in place all the time. We should always be working to provide a high quality research based curriculum, high quality materials to our students. So that's something that we're doing with grants, but over time we'll be able to have a replacement cycle, we hope, built into the budget so that we don't need the millions of dollars from Esser to keep that going. We have our instructional coaches, which are huge those are huge resources to provide high quality core. Right now, they're also serving as interventionists. The goal is always to have at least 80% of our students on grade level without additional supports. So The way I talk about it right now, in some ways, our triangle's upside down, where the bulk of our kids need additional supports. But as we flip that triangle the right way, we'll be able to move resources more. The goal is we will have established a good core curriculum, and then hopefully be able to reduce some of the intervention needs that we see. So it's a lot right now because we're really trying to address two issues, some gaps that existed prior and then that were exacerbated with the pandemic. So I don't know if that got at what you were hoping.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I know it was kind of an odd question to throw out, and I understand there's going to be some catch up, obviously, from everything that's been happening. It reminded me when I came to visit the school the other week, and I saw that it was on this part of the budget was like that really beautiful shop that's there that's just collecting dust and not sawdust as it should be, pun intended,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
So using that as an example, was that used? Was that
may.
position funded before?
If I
I'm
may,
not sure.
Dr. DeBarge?
Yeah. Yeah, Susan, I don't know when that position was cut from the budget or why.
So, that position was not included in the budget in my time on the school committee. We, for some time, have been on a really tight needs basis and trying to meet very basic needs. Good, bad, or otherwise, these ESSER funds are allowing us to catch up to, in my own mind, where we should have been to begin with. And some of that is, and again, credited to Dr. DeBarge and to Andy, realigning things and making the budget make more sense and being able to have a much more clear picture. We for some time have been, I don't want to say underfunded, but inappropriately funded. We've needed to have more teachers. We've needed to have more social workers. We need to have more special education educators, and the money wasn't there for us to be able to do that. And when it came to, and again, this is just me speaking, don't interpret it as other people's or the school committee as a body saying things. We have been underfunded for some time and been unable to meet what, in my view, are necessary needs for the school district. We've needed some social workers. We've needed a lot of things that haven't been able to be met. And with the ESSER funding and looking at the budget in a larger picture, we are able to do those things now. And so this really underscores the need to provide the best possible education for every child and every family that's in Greenfield. And that's always been my goal, and that's the whole reason I got on was elected to the school committee, and this truly is one of the best budget views that I've seen since I've been on the school, not one of the best, and really addresses a lot of the concerns that me as a parent and now as a school committee member have been looking for a long time. And yes, it may be that in the future we have to, not maybe, we're going to have to figure out how to include these people and these services in our budget. But the ultimate goal is providing the best education and services and needs to our students and families that live in Greenfield.
Right. Sure.
I hope that helps.
Yeah. No, I mean it goes to if folks have concerns about like where, you know, what the money's being used for, you know, how much, you know, should be invested, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. But again, just using that small piece as an example of like, we built this really beautiful school, what, 8 years ago, and if part of it's not even being utilized, that seems absolutely ridiculous. And also to give not just, at least in my opinion, not just to have the kind of primary education, like, we're not a vocational school, we're not a tech school, but to give outlets for different interests and activities that are integral also to not just making a well-rounded person, but sometimes giving sort of like a lifeline for somebody who may not be as, math smart. They'll find a creative outlet and then things of that nature. And I feel like a lot of our time ends up getting spent, I don't know, focusing on that like old school mentality of like, you need to have this many of this and this. And when really, and I think it also at the same time would help with possibly with some of the, whether they're behavioral issues or disabilities, anything like that, it's not as linear as I think goes through some people's minds. And so that's why I think it's important. And this does look really good. I really actually like the way this was spelled out. So I just want to point that out.
I think
Mike, I said when you were at the tour at the high school that your next seat was going to be on the school committee. I'm
Yeah.
just saying it again now, kid.
Okay. Anybody on the committee have any more questions or comments they'd like to share?
I'll make
Actually,
it quick, Councilor Healy.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Healy.
Are there any grants that you've actively applied for that aren't reflected in the budget that you are expecting to hear back on before the budget is consolidated?
The only one that I can think of is we have also applied for a DESE grant related to math materials.
Mhm.
And the grant award could be up to $100,000. I'm not sure what the timing is on that. Right now, to the best of my knowledge, that is the only other grant funding that we are waiting to hear, unless Andy knows of something that I can't remember, but I think that's the only other one.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. We've actually kept the school on for about an hour, so thank you so much. It's a lot. A school budget is huge, and
Yes.
all the tentacles to it and everything else. It's quite an endeavor. So, Councilor Jarvis, did you have something you'd like to say?
Just real quick. I await the spreadsheet because I'm a spreadsheet guy. I still use a spreadsheet in my daily life and doing my banking accounts and stuff like that. So, my mother was an accountant, so that's my spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Just if that could get sent out to the like ahead of time to the city council, maybe next year. To me, I find spreadsheets very informative. We use them in developing our budget, and we still do at the fire department. I believe Bob still does. So I find them very informative because they give you a big picture, and that's something that I feel. And this is my second year doing Ways and Means that's kind of lacking. That doesn't get sent to the city council. So.
Absolutely. I will take care of it as soon as we log off. And I will tell you, I greatly appreciate your respect for the spreadsheet, because that's how we build this budget and live by it. And I'll be honest, I wasn't aware that you folks didn't have it already. That is my oversight. I will absolutely make sure it goes out with the budget presentation next year. So give me about 15 minutes and you'll have it at least to Kathy Scott.
Okay, that's excellent. Okay, so if we are ready to move on at this particular point, we will thank Dr. DeBarge and her team for bearing with us this evening as we go through the school budget. I want to say we're glad to have you on board, Dr. DeBarge, and we're very happy to have you with us during this first budget season for you, which we hope will be the first of many years to come. But you won't see me. You won't see me in 2 years.
No. Well, I am very happy to always talk about the budget. I could have stayed on for many more hours, but you all would have been asleep. So if you have any other questions, please feel free. I know it's a big task for you to look at a budget of this magnitude. So thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us.
Have a great night.
You too. Take care now. Thank you. Okay.
Member Forgy, thank you for allowing me to speak. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Have a good evening, everyone.
You too. Okay, we are now moving to the second part of our presentation this evening, which is the Franklin County Technical School budget. It's found in your budget book on page 129. I see Russ Kubis out there. Russ, hello, good evening. How are you?
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Superintendent Martin would have liked to join us tonight, but he's at an awards ceremony in Worcester. Our big vocational awards for all the vocational schools across the state happens tonight. So he was there with the student being awarded. So
well, that is fine. We appreciate that very much. But tonight, it's up to you, I guess, at this point. And if you would like to, we have some new members of our Ways and Means Committee. If you could start just a little bit with how this assessment comes to us, that would be great. And then anything else you want us to know as part of your presentation.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. And I promise I will not be an hour. I will be a fraction of that if everything goes well. We are one of 7 public high schools in the county. We are the largest 9 through 12 high school in the county, which I know surprises a lot of people. But if you go on the DESE website, you will see that we are the largest by a couple hundred students, actually, for high school population. We are your vocational high school. You are a 22% owner of our school. You send 122 students to our school. You have 4 members on our school board. I think that's important to know because a lot of people confuse us with a school choice school or a charter school. And in both those cases, you have no representation on the boards of those types of schools. We are your vocational school, so you have 4 members. They are Paul Dorn, Mark Maloney, Donna Woodcock, and Mike McIntyre. So we have 4 members on our committee. So a little more than half of what you have for school members for your city school. We are a growing high school. So over the last 3 years, our enrollment has grown 18%. Our budget, total budget, has gone up 21% over the same span. The town's share of our budget, and I will get to your question on how we calculate the assessments in a little bit. Our town assessments have gone up on average 2.1% per year over the 3 years of growth. So we've grown by 18%. Our total budget's up 21%. The town share has gone up by a small fraction. So how does that happen? Well, when you're a growing school and you're not stuck in the hold harmless quagmire of the state foundation formula, you actually get more state aid. So our state aid is coming in at a decent clip, enough to cover our students, cost of the additional students. We also had some economies of scale as we grew. We didn't have to hire proportionally the same number of teachers as we were growing because we had some excess capacity. So as we grew, we reached some economies of scale. We are into the second year of a brand new program, which is our veterinary science program. We have 13 shops. I know machine technology was mentioned earlier. We have a machine technology shop. We have a welding shop, many other shops. But the veterinary science is our newest shop. We're in year 2 of that, so next fiscal year will be year 3. We are writing a grant, and we just announced this to our school committee last night, for a 14th shop, and it will be an aviation program. We are right next door to the airport. The airport is working on leasing us a piece of land for $1 for 99 years. And we will search out the grant to spend on a hangar and classrooms on their property, but it will be our classroom space. So that's about a $2.5 million grant that we're chasing.
Wow.
On that end, we are also chasing a grant in the $250,000 to $300,000 range for a mobile welding laboratory that'll go on either a tractor trailer truck or a bus type vehicle that we could take out to sites to do virtual welding. Nowadays, with the technology they have, you don't have to use the sparks, don't need to be flying on real product. We can do it with virtual welding with the headsets and all of that. We will be working with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office to bring the welding program to them, so we can actually drive over to the jail and they can have inmates working on the welding program. So we are working on that project also. Because we're a growing school, I've heard questions earlier, so I got a chance to write some notes as you guys were asking the Greenfield Public Schools. We have grown in a number of positions, mostly in this past year. We have added about 8/10 of a person or a position for an administrator. That person is a half-time dean of students, which is a vice principal, the disciplinary position for schools. And the other half of that time is spent as a curriculum coordinator on the academic side. So we have two sides of the house, vocational, academic. We've added some administrative staff there. This gets us back to our administrative staff that we had probably 7 or 8 years ago. At that time, we had probably 460, 450 students in our high school. We have now 580 students. So again, we are growing. We've added a half an English position, a half of social studies position, a half a math position, quarter of a Spanish position. Actually, one of our administrators is teaching a Spanish course per day, so he's wearing a couple different hats. Added a couple paraprofessionals, added a person an LPN to our nurse's office because of the whole COVID crisis, and added a custodian. So we are in full growth mode. We base our assessment to our member towns. We have 19 member towns. The assessment's based on our district agreement, and the first piece of the assessment is very similar to what you go through with your Chapter 70 funds for your school district, is the state dictates a minimum contribution that you are supposed to pay towards your local schools. Same thing happens with Franklin County Tech. Then anything we charge our towns above and beyond the minimum contribution is basically just proportioned out on your share of the pupils to the total share of pupils attending Franklin County Tech. So this past year, your assessment has gone down. Your operating assessment is based on 122 students. It is $1,234,846. So operationally, you're down 3.5% from last year, and your enrollment dropped less than 1%. So you did drop a student or two, but your assessment's down. And that's because your proportional share of the district. We've got getting more students proportionally from other towns than Greenfield's share, so that fluctuates a little bit. Just to put something in brief perspective, I love your budget book. We are trying to emulate your budget book and have a clickable budget book, and we're not there yet, so give us a few more years. But if you go to the mayor's budget book on page 12, I'll give you a little perspective on where Franklin County Tech is. We have 2.2% of your overall budget. So where does that put us? Our 1.3 million-ish that we charge for your assessment puts us somewhere, we're about half the size of your public works department, and we're a little bit bigger than your human services portion of your budget. So Franklin Tech is somewhere down there, 2.2% of your budget. If you go to the next page, there is some information on that page that I find interesting. You spend more money in school choice sending tuition, over $2 million, than you do on Franklin County Tech School. So again, our assessment's around 1.3. 2 million is spent on school choice. Again, you have representation on our school. You don't on the school choice schools. I know people love to compare us to being a school choice school. We are not. We are your second high school, your vocational school. Same with the charter school assessment I see on page 13. We come in under that. Your local dollars per student at your town school, your city school, is $8,095 per student. If you use the state's foundation formula, a vocational high school should normally be about 1.5 times the cost of a academic high school. In our case here, we're not that. We're $10,122 per student. So we're a couple grand more than your the sending school. So for me, when I look at statistics and try to figure out where we stand and how we're doing for our local towns, I think we're doing okay. Like I said, normally the foundation budget says we should be about 1.5 times the size of you guys, and we're certainly not that. Again, to put us in perspective, if you flip out to page 127, which is where your Greenfield Public Schools and your cost centers were, I know you were on that page earlier. Where does Franklin County Tech fit in on this page? We are, again, $1.2 million-ish, so we're somewhere smaller than your Newton Street School. A little bit less than the transportation costs that you pay for your public schools, and less than half of what you pay in special education for your public schools. So just to give you some perspective, we're a tiny part of your budget. I know that. I'm not going to suck up a lot of your time tonight. But we're pretty proud of what we're doing. We are one of the few growing schools around. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have of us. And Christine, it's nice to see you after many years of not seeing you and auditing you back in the 1990s, I think it was.
Yeah, that was quite a time, wasn't it?
Yeah,
We looked a little different then too.
that was pre-city. That was when Greenfield was just a town.
He was the auditor for the, to come in, an outside auditing firm that would come in and audit our books. And they were very strict. So let's just but nice. They had nice smiles, but they were very strict with us. So we appreciated that too. Thank you, Russ, very much. Any questions at this point? Comments to share as well?
Oh, I love the silence.
I do too, except it's not normal. So anyway, Chinny?
I asked this last year. What are your most popular? What are the most popular things that people go into? I heard the veterinary school is of the things that you teach. What are the most popular?
So where do we have potential wait lists as far as the vocational programs?
Yes,
Okay,
it's a better way to put it.
Yeah. Obviously, because it is a new shiny program, the vet science program is doing well with kids signing up for it. Culinary is often a favorite program of ours, or with the students for us. Our electrical program is seeing a surge in students making first choices to go into the electrical program. So what we do is we have the first half of a vocational year is called exploratory for freshman students, and they'll go see probably half of our shops, and then they rank their shops, and we try to place them on their top ranking. So I would say electrical, culinary, and I think all the building trades are on their way back up as far as popularity, and that kind of makes sense with the scare we've had with COVID and a lot of things moving overseas. The whole resurgence of vocational schools. And we really believe the aviation program will be popular. There's only one other school in the country that has FAA approval for their high school program, and that's Westfield Voc. And they have a huge wait list for students to get into their aviation program. So there's a ton of jobs, believe it or not, out in that little world of aviation. Our students would be trained on obviously the mechanics of airplanes, but if you go down to like Gulfstream and Westfield, those are luxury jets that they do. So you could employ all of our trades in one of those jets, both from the carpentry perspective, electrical perspective, and plumbing. So we're pretty excited about that program. We think we've got a decent shot because some of the members at the state actually encouraged us to apply for the aviation grant. So we're hoping we're near the top of their list on that. So I hope I answered part of your question at least anyway.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other Ways and Means members? Questions for Russ?
I just had one, Chris.
Go ahead, right ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
I was looking at this. There's not a whole lot of like backup documentation that we got in the book. But is there you guys don't run a different fiscal year than we do, right?
No, we're the same fiscal year as you all.
Okay, that's what I figured. Is there fiscal year 23 numbers anywhere? Because the only information we have in this is fiscal year 2022 and before.
So yes, we sent our budget book, which is 43 pages, to somebody in the city, mayor's office, or somebody has our detailed budget book. So I had assumed you all had copies of it and had them in front of you tonight, because no one had asked me that if I needed to bring a display or anything. But yes, there's a budget book that's already at the city. If it's not, I will resend it again. But when our budget gets voted, I send it out to all 19 towns to either the town administrators, or in your case, the mayor's office. So somebody's got it.
So we will reach out to Kathy Scott tomorrow, and we'll see if she can't forward us a copy of that, your budget book. The thing is that this is basically an assessment piece for us. We don't have much to say on the individual line items and everything else, but I still think it's important to familiarize yourself with what goes into all of these budgets. It's very important for us to understand the numbers. So thank you. Any more questions? Okay, that's great. Well, Russ, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for being with us this evening. Yeah, you're under 20 minutes, or just about 20 minutes, so we appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I figure you got plenty of work to do.
Okay, I bet you do. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it too.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, next item on our agenda is other business. Does anybody have any business they want to bring forward? Okay. Our next meeting is Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. This would be our regular monthly meeting, but we will be working on the budget. And our next up on our agenda is the small departments, which will include assessors, treasurer collector, debt department, recreation, library, council on aging, energy department, clerk council, registrar of voters, and elections. GSET has been rescheduled to Wednesday, April 27th at 6 p.m. So again, that date for our next meeting is Tuesday, April 19, 2022 at 6 p.m. via Webex. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Jarvis.
Is there a second?
Second disorder.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no opposed? No abstentions? Okay, I'm going to close the meeting at 7:23. I want to thank everybody for their patience and their good humor and their goodwill. Thank you, folks. You've been great. Really appreciate it.